Hello everyone, welcome back to Into Sports. I'm your host Evan, and you know what we're about to do? We're about to predict the NFL playoff games. This is the divisional round. But before we do that, I'd like to start with how my predictions panned out last week. So in the Colts-Texans game, I predicted the Colts to win 28-27, and they won 21-7. I absolutely expected more offense from Deshaun Watson and company out of this Houston team. And Andrew Luck played well, as expected, and Colts very handily won that game. I also predicted Seattle to win 23-21, but Dallas stole that one 24-22. I had the score about right, but I did not have the winner. Close game. Seattle was unable to run the ball. They didn't switch to Russell Wilson. Pete Carroll, Brian Schottenheimer did not make that decision to let Wilson air it out more. Therefore, they lost the game. I took the Chargers to beat Baltimore 24-23 in a very close game. They won 23-17. Baltimore had that fourth quarter surge and almost came back to win that game. That would have been a miracle. And finally, I had 24-16 Chicago, but the Eagles won 16-15. It was a really good game. Low scoring. It wasn't as cold as I expected. It was about 40 degrees. Trubisky played well, but it wasn't enough. Eagles win that one. Now let's move on to this week's games, the divisional round, like I mentioned. At Saturday, January 12th, 4:35 p.m. Eastern, of course. The number 6 seed Colts, who moves to 11-6, go into Arrowhead Stadium to play the number 1 seeded Chiefs at 12-4. They're coming off a bye. Chiefs are 6-point favorites with a 57-point over/under. But I'm going to take Indianapolis to win 30-28. The Colts beat the Texans 21-7, like I mentioned earlier, in the first round of the playoffs. The Chiefs haven't won a home playoff game since 1994. You think of the home field advantage that they have, and you think, they better win more than that. I mean, they haven't won in 25 years at home in a playoff game. And it won't help that Eric Berry is not expected to play, their star safety, with a heel injury. For Indianapolis, T.Y. Hilton and Eric Ebron will play. That's very encouraging. And Sammy Watkins for Kansas City is practicing, and he will likely play. This is an excellent battle of coach-quarterback combos. You have Andy Reid and Pat Mahomes versus Frank Reich and Andrew Luck, 2 MVP candidates. But I think Marlon Mack and this Colts run game behind this really good offensive line will be able to hammer this one out. Indianapolis needs to win the time of possession battle, and they're going to do that by running the ball with Marlon Mack, who in the last 2 games against Tennessee, 25 carries, 119 yards, 1 touchdown. Phenomenal game. Then against Houston in the playoffs, 24 carries, 148 yards and a touchdown. Those are the numbers we need to see if Indianapolis is going to win the game. This Chiefs defense is nothing to be scared about. They give up 405 yards per game, which is the second most in the league. If Andrew Luck's going to have a great game, this Colts offensive line is going to have a great game. And that starts by blocking Chris Jones and Dee Ford, 2 dynamic pass rushers. But honestly, Colts offensive line might be the best in the league, so I absolutely think they can do this. Because if you stop the Chiefs' pass rush, you can exploit their entire defense because it is really that bad. So they're able to run the ball with Mack, and if they get protection for Andrew Luck, look for T.Y. Hilton to have a monster game versus terrible secondary. In the wildcard game, 5 for 85, that's a solid game, but I'm going to expect more in this one from him. Eric Ebron, man or machine? I don't know. 14 touchdowns on the year, that's just what he does. Expect him to get in the paint, get in the end zone. At least once this game, we're going to see a celebration out of him on Saturday. We talked about how bad this Chiefs defense is, but the offense has made up for it all year. Pat Mahomes, 5,000 yards, 50 touchdowns. I don't think he should be the MVP, and I'll explain why in a different podcast. But even against this Colts defense that has played really, really well over the last 8 weeks, I expect him to light it up. We know Kareem Hunt is no longer on a team, but his replacement, Damian Williams, who they recently rewarded with a 2-year contract, he's averaging 5.1 yards per carry this year. He's going to have to run through Darius Leonard and this very good Colts defensive front, but he's looked really good, so I'm expecting a decent game out of him. We know how good Tyreek Hill is. Really fast, really good down the field. But Pierre Desir, this Indianapolis cornerback, limited DeAndre Hopkins to 5 receptions and only 37 yards last week. He really locked him down. And I don't know if that's going to happen against Tyreek Hill, but I'm limiting expectations for him this week. So because of that, I think Travis Kelce could take on even a larger role, even larger than the 1,336 yards he had in the NFL regular season, second most of all time among tight ends. And I think even Sammy Watkins, who is likely to play in this game, returning from injury, he's missed quite a few weeks, he could even take on a larger role. Take a little pressure off Tyreek Hill, little pressure off Travis Kelce, little pressure off Damian Williams in the pass game. So I think we have a really fun, really entertaining game where Indianapolis wins 30-28. I think the Colts win the time of possession battle, and Marlon Mack has a monster game. Now let's move on to the game on Saturday night, 8:15. The number 4 seed Cowboys at 11-6 travel to Los Angeles to take on the number 2 seed Rams at 13-3. Rams are 7-point favorite, and it's a 49.5 point over-under. But despite Los Angeles being 7-point favorites, I'm going to take Dallas 27-24. Dallas is coming off a home win against Seattle 24-22, and Todd Gurley has had a 3-week break, and he's now fully healthy off the injury report. His knee is healed up. I think that's huge to having been 3 weeks of rest and to come back fully healthy. But someone that will not be fully healthy is Cole Beasley. He was not practicing on Thursday. I'm recording this on Thursday. It's a little too early to tell, but I would guess that he would gut it out and play in this one. The story of this game is the 2 elite running backs, Ezekiel Elliott, first in the regular season in rushing yards, Todd Gurley, third in rushing yards in the regular season. This Sean McVay Rams offense is built around the stretch run with Todd Gurley. They run lots of play action, misdirection, off this little zone stretch, and everything is built around it. That being said, if Dallas can stop this, with their elite front 7 featuring Leighton Vander Esch, Jalen Smith, DeMarcus Lawrence, then that could be the key to them winning this game. But the Rams' offensive line is very good, so I think this scheme will have some success. Now, over the last month or two, Jared Goff has really struggled against Philadelphia, Detroit, Chicago. He looked terrible on Sunday Night Football, but he really bounced back against San Francisco. 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. He only threw for 199 yards, and most of those 4 touchdowns is the fact that it's the 49ers. They're not playing for anything, and they're not a good defense whatsoever. So I'm not completely sure what we'll get out of Goff in this one, but I don't expect it to be as bad as the Chicago game, as the Philadelphia or Detroit game, but I also don't think it will be as good as the Chiefs when they play the Chiefs on Monday Night Football in that, I think, 54-51 game where he looked great. So I think he'll be somewhere in the middle of the road. But if he does want to be successful, he's going to need to hit Brandon Cooks on the big play over top. Dallas showed some struggles covering the deep ball last week. Seattle's deep threat, Tyler Lockett, 4 receptions, 120 yards. If LA gets a performance like that out of Cooks, that could be the difference in this game. Defensively, the Rams have been hideous against the run. 23rd versus the rush on the year, which isn't terrible, isn't great, but they've been really bad recently. And guess who they will encounter in this matchup? Ezekiel Elliott. Last week, 30 touches for 170 yards and a touchdown. I expect huge amounts of volume from Zeke and an excellent performance. But if you want to win in the NFL, you have to be able to throw the football. And Dak is going to need to find Amari Cooper. 7 receptions, 106 yards versus Seattle. And he'll see a lot of Marcus Peters, who has really struggled this year, specifically against great wide receivers like Michael Thomas. But Dak's going to need time in the pocket if he's going to want to be able to throw down the field. So this Cowboys offensive line, the interior of the line, is going to have to be able to neutralize Aaron Donald with double teams or rollouts in the pocket by Dak. They're going to have to be creative in trying to limit his production. Now Dak, he's really clutch. 13 game-winning drives over the last 3 years, most in the league. He has that clutch gene, he has a knack for winning, and he played really well at the end of the game against Seattle, especially scrambling, running, making plays with his feet. Whoever wins the time of possession in this game will win the game outright, and I expect that to be Dallas. So I'm taking that 27-24 in a game where a lot of production will be on the ground. So you watch those two games, then you go to bed, and you wake up Sunday, January 13th at 1:05. You're going to see the Chargers of LA at a 13-4 record go into Foxborough to play the New England Patriots, number 2 seed, at 11-5. New England is 4.5-point favorites with a 47.5-point over-under. I'm going to pick my third upset of the day. I'm going to take the Chargers to win 22-20. This game is going to be temperature-wise in the low 20s. There's possibility of snow. I'm not sure. It's only Thursday. But it could happen. It could be snowing in Foxborough. And Chargers tight end Hunter Henry will actually play in this game. I said he would play last time, and he didn't. He had the torn ACL in the offseason, and he's playing in the same season he tore his ACL. Pretty remarkable. The injury happened very early in the offseason, but still impressive. In his excellent Hall of Fame career, Phillip Rivers is 0-7 against New England and Tom Brady. But I think that will change. When we talk about this matchup, we focus on these two quarterbacks. But I think this will be a battle of special teams running the football and defense. Because the Patriots don't have any downfield threats now that Josh Gordon is not with the team. And the Chargers have arguably the best secondary in the entire league. Julian Edelman, Brady's most reliable target, will be in the slot, where he always is, matched up with All-Pro Desmond King. If you are a slot wide receiver, there is no worse of a matchup you could have. So you'd think, well, what about Gronk? This is going to be a Gronk game, right? No, he's been a non-factor. In the last 3 games combined, only 45 yards. I'm doing the quick math here. That's 15 yards a game. In my mind, he will absolutely retire after this year. And if Brady even wants to have time in the pocket, his offensive line is going to have to try to block Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram, who had an amazing 2-sack, 1 fumble forced, and 1 fumble recovery game against Baltimore. I believe the Chargers can get to Tom Brady at will. So we established the fact that it's going to be really tough for Brady to throw against this Chargers team because he won't have time, he doesn't have the weapons, and Chargers have an amazing secondary. So what do you think? They're going to have to run the football. Sony Michel, averaging 71 yards per game on the ground this year. But last week versus the Ravens, the Chargers used a 7 defensive back set, and it worked really well in stopping the run. Lamar Jackson, Gus Edwards, and Kenneth Dixon. I don't know if they'll do that this game, but it'd be smart for Gus Bradley and Anthony Lynn if they did. So Michel will be the key to victory for New England. The running back on the other side of the football is Melvin Gordon. He needs to get it going. Recently, he hasn't played as well as he did earlier in the season, but New England's giving up 4.9 yards per carry, which is the 3rd highest in the league, so I expect him to get back on track. One of the best cornerbacks in the league, Stephon Gilmore, will be on Mike Williams on the outside. So I see more falling on the shoulders of slot receiver Keenan Allen, a Pro Bowler, who, like his teammate at running back, Melvin Gordon, hasn't had his best weeks over the last month or so, but I expect him to have a much better game in this one. Last week in Baltimore, the Chargers kicked 6 field goals, made 5 of them. They were not able to turn those into touchdowns, and they will need to in Foxborough. So, in a game where all of the talk is about the quarterbacks, I expect this to be dominated by the running backs, and specifically Melvin Gordon, to lead the Chargers to a 22-20 victory. The Chargers haven't lost away from LA the whole year, and New England hasn't lost outside of Foxborough all year. So something has to give, and I expect it to be New England's record in Gillette Stadium. And now we are to our final game of the divisional weekend. At 4:40 on Sunday, the number 6 seed Eagles. The story. We know what they did last year, the Super Bowl champions. 10-7. Go into New Orleans to play the number 1 seed, the New Orleans Saints, who have a 13-3 record. New Orleans, 8-point favorites with a 50-point over-under. And I'm actually going to take the only home team I have in this one, the only favorite. I'm going to take the Saints. In Week 10, same teams, same stadium. The Saints won 48-7. But Carson Wentz was the quarterback, not Nick Foles. Last week, Philadelphia won at Chicago 16-15 on the quote-unquote double doink field goal by Cody Parkey. Something out of the ordinary occurred the other day. Saints coach Sean Payton entered the Saints locker room with 4 armed guards and the Lombardi Trophy on top of $225,000 in cash and said, "Y'all want this? Win 3 blank in games." Personally, as a Saints fan, I don't put that bias in my prediction though. I love this motivation tactic out of Sean Payton. Your team has a bye. You haven't played for 2 weeks because you rested Drew Brees, a lot of the starters, in Week 17 against Carolina. I personally like it a lot. And the Eagles are coming in town after a very emotional win. I think the motivation advantage definitely goes to New Orleans in this one. Because we saw a team like Minnesota last year in the playoffs who had a very emotional game against New Orleans. We know what happens. We don't speak of it around here. And they came out flat against Philadelphia. I'm not saying I'm expecting Philadelphia to lay an egg in this one, but just something to keep an eye on. We got Drew Brees. We got Sean Payton. And they're playing at home in the Superdome in front of a city that will be absolutely juiced up for this playoff game. I mean, name a better trio. And last week, Mitchell Trubisky, he sliced up, carved up the Eagles' secondary. And it's Drew Brees versus Mitchell Trubisky. If Trubisky can do that, absolutely I expect Brees to. And you ask, how is he going to do that? Star wide receiver Michael Thomas. You'd think would be Thanksgiving because he will have an absolute feast against the Eagles secondary. Allen Robinson last week, wide receiver for Chicago Bears, 10 receptions, 143 yards, and a touchdown. If you're getting that out of Allen Robinson, just imagine what Michael Thomas will do in this game. On the opposite side, Saints wide receiver Ted Ginn is playing. I know he's played the last few weeks, but I really think he is the key for New Orleans. In that dry streak where they lost to Cowboys, they didn't play well against Tampa Bay, Ted Ginn was out for all of those. When he is out, they have no true deep threat, and on third down, 49% of the targets are going to Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara when Ted Ginn's not on the field. He gives Brees that third guy, and he also gives them the guy over the top to make the big play. Because without him, everything is underneath, and the defense knows it, and it's very predictable. People need to talk more and more about Ted Ginn and the value he has for New Orleans. Philadelphia has the #1 rated front seven per Pro Football Focus. But the Saints have an elite offensive line. I think they kind of counteract in this one, and I still do expect Kamara to have a solid game on the ground, but more specifically through the passing game, on third down, and in the red zone. Nick Foles, I mean, my goodness, 4-0 in his last 4 postseason games. He's just clutch. But Josh Adams, their running back, was an absolute non-factor last week. He had 1 carry. But Darren Sproles was effective. He was getting most of the snaps, and it's going to be his return to New Orleans. I expect him to be featured in this game. The question won't be, will he have an important role in the offense? It's going to be, will he be effective against this #2 ranked Saints run defense, second in the league in yards allowed on the ground. It looks like Foles is going to have to do it through the air. And Marshawn Lattimore, the Saints' #1 corner, who normally shadows, will be on Alshon Jeffrey most of this game. Jeffrey last game against Chicago, 6 for 82. That's pretty good. But with Marshawn Lattimore shadowing him, I expect maybe a little bit less. So would it maybe be more Nelson Aguilar? Matchup against Eli Apple? Last week, Aguilar only 32 yards on 3 receptions, and Eli Apple has played really well as of late. So Zach Ertz may very well be the #1 target for Foles, and I'll see a lot of Alex Anzalone in man and zone coverages. Anzalone has been playing very well as a linebacker for New Orleans, so it's going to be tough, but Zach Ertz, he's really good. I'll take New Orleans to win this one comfortably, 30-20. So just to run back through my picks, last week I was 2-2 in reality, and if I was to bet on the Vegas lines, I would have been 3-1. So it was an okay week. I hope to do better this one on my predictions. So Colts Chiefs, I'll take 30-28 Indianapolis. I'll take the over on 57 points. Cowboys, Rams. I'll take 27-24 Dallas. I'll take the over on 49.5. Chargers, Patriots. I like Los Angeles Chargers, 22-20, and I'll take the under on 47.5. And Eagles, Saints. I like the New Orleans 30-20, and my point total is 50, and that's the over under. But it might change by half. So I'll just take the under on the over under in Vegas. And also all the teams I picked to win, I like them against the spread. I'm very excited for this weekend. But if you did enjoy watching, thank you for watching. Have a great day. Maybe subscribe to see when the videos come out. Have an excellent day. Peace.